Okay, perfect. So we are live. So good afternoon to you, Ellie. Lovely to see you again after a little while. It's been a little while. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, sun is shining, so I'm happy.
You know, the sun's out and therefore the guns have come out as well.
Yeah.
The show is on. Awesome. So really, really grateful for you to join. And just for anyone that hasn't watched this before and catches up later on, it is really about sharing the stories of leaders from around the world who have heeded the call to use their talents in service of not one themselves, but their families, the communities they serve, and the world at large. And hopefully for people to hear through your journey that leadership comes in all different shapes, sizes, flavors, you name it, and hopefully inspire them if that's their calling too, really. So how does that sit with you in terms of a agenda for today?
Sounds like a fair ask. And you let me get my tea, so I'm all good.
It was in the memo, coffee with Kofi. So if
Yeah,
you need,
that's true.
you need to have a
Yeah,
drink, we've fallen at the first hurdle, but no, I'm
yeah.
glad that we got to do that. So yeah, just before we kick off, I think it's always lovely to get some context as to who you are. Like I know you and family and all the rest of it, but just in terms of your elevator explanation of who is Eleanor, aka Ellie Christie, like how would you describe yourself?
Many faces or many hats. So, mother of three,
Mhm.
now biggish children. So, 10 to 14 years old with all the different challenges that that
Mhm.
brings.
Mhm.
I've had a really successful career and continue to hopefully have that. So, starting in the Big Four, and even before that, did some interesting stuff when I was very young in my gap year and stuff. And since then, now I find myself at Nando's. So I was in-house before that at UK Power Networks and now
Mhm.
in-house at Nando's, covering a whole broad range of stuff across finance and governance.
Mhm.
I'm a charity trustee for a national charity called Contact, who uh, work and support families of children with disabilities.
Mhm.
And I'm a school governor.
Nice.
Uh, and I just love having fun in my life as well. So that's
Amazing.
the elevator pitch on me.
Amazing. And what a pitch that is. And I think we could summarize that as coaches often like to do as hashtag Wonder Woman, because to me,
I'll take it.
hashtag Wonder Woman, I often talk about people that would like to save a life and, take it easier and more pedestrian pace and those that want to make an impact. And if I look at that as a spectrum, I know where you sit and it definitely falls into the Wonder Woman category. So hashtag Wonder Woman, save
Okay,
Ellie's.
I'm taking the win, Kofi.
Take it, take it.
Yeah,
I'm sure some days with all the places been in, it may feel different, but today
yeah.
I'm going to give that to you. So thank you for that. That's a really great start. And one of the things that really fascinates me, and there'll be several that we'll touch upon over this conversation, is your formal education. Going back, it fascinates me for what I see is focus and dedication to excellence. And I say that because I think your degree, first class, you did your accounting technician exams, first time passes, a chartered accountant, first time passes. And that's not easy to do. And I certainly speak from myself, but maybe many others, I didn't really get the importance of trying to excel from a younger age. So can you walk us through your choices and how it came to be that you basically set Ellie a challenge and Ellie smashes it? Because that I think is a secret source that I'd love to know more about and maybe use myself.
Well, and the interesting thing is obviously now you and me and probably lots of others, I keep trying to work out how do you get what you want out of your kids, right? How do you
Yeah,
help them achieve their potential?
yeah.
So for me, actually, I look back, that's quite an interesting question because so I came from fairly rough area in Wembley, had like fairly, well, I would describe it as a really rubbish school. Like I don't remember learning anything in primary school, and I
Mm,
remember mostly being responsible for teaching other children in the
right.
class, and that's what I remember of primary school. And I remember my mum wasn't very impressed with the whole thing at school and tried to get my sisters out of that school, but not
Mm,
she never got me out. And then I got a scholarship to secondary school and went to a private school, and it was like a fish out of water for me. And even now, I probably carry some of that around because so I went from a school where I was used to being able to be top dog and defend myself by fighting pretty hard with my fists. And
Hmm.
then I went to a private school, all girls, mostly really well-heeled girls,
Hmm.
and I didn't have the same life experiences. Like I look at my kids now, they have exposure to the same things that those kids would have done, even though they're not in private schools, but they go to the theatre at Christmas.
Right.
You know, they get to go on the ski trip at school. They get to do like pretty nice things and have
Mm.
lovely lives. But I look back and I just didn't know what these kids were talking about. And I had no idea how to get involved with psychological warfare. I knew how to defend myself in playground fights, and
Right.
that's not what was happening. Uh, so it was definitely, and it was hard. And I think it actually, so then when you're asking about my education, I don't remember performing so highly at secondary school because I was used to being the best, and I really just became, it was one of the top schools in the country at the time, and I was just pretty average at that school, and I didn't like
Mm.
that feeling. And it probably just resulted in me being quite rebellious all the way through my teens. Like I would just
Mm.
bunk off school. I bunked off my A level final. So like A levels, it was just not firing, and I got a great, as I said to you this, I got a great gap year placement at Arthur Anderson, really prestigious, and it actually just changed everything for me because I think all the way through school, my parents used to bribe me. You know, they used to say if you get an A, you'll get £100. That was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
it
a
still
lot of
is
money
for
now.
kids. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Um, but in those days, but I think I was confused because really genuinely thought that the A levels were for them. Just
Mm.
at no point did the penny drop that it was for me.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I just was and then by the time I'd gone off to uni, or done the gap year and then gone to uni, they'd kind of accepted I wasn't going to be a doctor. And so they'd lost all interest, not in a bad way, but they'd lost interest in kind of my academic
yeah.
achievements. And then I realized this is your life.
Right,
And it's
right.
going to be a long old time if you don't start applying yourself to this. So
Mm.
that was why when I went to uni, suddenly I started turning in all my assignments and doing all my own homework and really trying and working hard. And it just all changed. Like
Yeah,
like my attainment changed. And probably like that decision, I don't know whether it's honest to say, like I think if I'd gone to Oxbridge, which a lot of peers did at school, I think the trajectory would have continued because I'd have still found myself to not be the best.
yeah,
And then but being the best inspires me to keep
yeah.
being the best. That's just a personal driver, and that's not going to be the same for everyone. But
Sure.
I see some of those traits in my kids different. They're obviously all three different. And so you're trying to find that unlock. But I definitely try to encourage them to say, like, I'm not going to take responsibility for doing your homework if it's late.
Yeah,
You want to be late, that's on you. So,
yeah. I think there's so much in that which could just be the whole conversation, because in essence, I guess you've gone from the carrot in terms of encouragement. You've
yeah,
gone from big fish in a small pond where you're teaching people to a school where the average level is so high that everyone's on it. My daughter
yeah,
talks about this now. She's in a grammar school, and she's gone from a primary school that was okay, but
yeah,
she grew it, and now everyone wants to smash it. Like, so she's
yeah,
forced to run harder, train harder, think better, and collaborate in different ways to really elevate. So there's a bit in there about the environment as well. And then when you talk about the parenting, I should have read books. I didn't. And even if I had, each of the three that I have, similar to yours, like you say, they're motivated in such
different.
different
Yeah.
ways where, yeah, and I would say I don't like my children. I do, but there's sometimes when I'm like, you don't realize how good you now have it.
Yeah, you just want to shake them and say,
Do you know what I mean?
your
Like,
life is so good and you have so much potential.
right,
Please enjoy these days.
right. It's like
It's when they roll their eyes. Oh, I wish I didn't have to go to school tomorrow. And you're like, You mean you don't want to go and hang out with your mates all day?
Right? Like
Best days.
no bills to pay, no food to find, no nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but then in my calmer sense times, I sort of reflect on the fact that we don't know what we don't know, and that we actually do grow through the stuff we grow through. So yeah, the challenge is there, it sounds like, to try and impart in them the things that gave you the grit and determination, whilst offering them a very different lifestyle to you had. So if you figure
Yeah.
it, answers on postcard, send it my way, because I am in the mix of trying to do that with the
Yeah, I'm not pretending to be a parenting
no,
expert. So.
yeah, when you do, as the way you do.
Yeah.
And brilliant. And I'm just building on your academic highlights. That's really good insight that you shared. If we look at your career, um, knowing you as I have, like, you've been exposed to like a variety of sectors, um, both now in-house, but also previously obviously with consultancies where you go to different clients. Was this on purpose, that quest for variety?
I think it is on purpose. I think I like things to have variety, and I don't. I also, so people do ask me, do you think that you are now sort of hospitality expert or utility expert? So I probably am, having worked in both, but
Mm,
I also just see that. I mean, I think the finance sector is probably different, but other than that, I think like sectors, the skills that you learn in them are broadly very transferable, and the same has
mm,
been true in my current role. I've kind of come from one background in finance, tax, accounting, and moved a lot into governance, but the skills are all very much similar. So you are
mm.
still using the same skills. So for me, I think I'm constantly wanting a new challenge, and one of the ways to find the challenge is through variety. The other
Mm,
way is, I mean, you can take different sorts of variety, but it is intentional uh, to the extent that I would get bored if everything was the same.
yeah, I like that bit about challenge through the variety, because I think often the growth that we experience comes through the challenges. But when I ask people the question of, say, for your physical well-being, you've got to go to the gym or do some form of exercise
Yeah.
5 times a week, 45 minutes, or there's this new drug you can take, 2 pills a day, and you'll have the same physical outcome. Which should you choose? Can you imagine what people typically say?
I don't know because I think that's it, thinking of the exercise as work, but the experience and sense of achievement can be good. But I think that may be me because I definitely don't like pills and I would enjoy, but I try to twist everything to be something I enjoy. So if you said to me going to the gym, I'd say no chance. But if you said to me go and do some boxing or cycling, I'd be like, okay, sounds like fun.
Mm,
Let's go.
brilliant. And you know what? In a way, I'm not surprised that you said that, because you've sought challenges, and I think in time you've also experienced the benefits of those challenges. And it's cheesy, I know, but people often say who you become pursuing those goals is more
Yeah.
important than the actual goal itself, and that comes through in what you're saying and how you've manifested your life. So I also like the mindset that's peeping through here, in terms of trying to find the fun in something. So yes, you've got to do exercise. I don't like the gym, but what do I like? Okay, boxing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing the exercise, but you've changed your perception about what
Yeah.
that is and how you consider it. So, brilliant, brilliant. And I'm thinking back now, maybe this is a trick question. It is a theme in terms of how long I've known you, but I'm trying to remember, like, when we very first met, like how many years ago it was. Can you help me? Because my mind
So
is.
I think we met in 2013 because that's when helped me move roles for the first time. So that is 12 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. And at that time, I'm remembering it was coffee somewhere near
Somewhere near Farringdon or
Big Street,
Blackfriars. Yeah.
Farringdon. There, it
Yeah.
was along there, and we met. And I remember walking down some steps, and then we came and met. At the time, do you remember what your call was to pivot away from professional services and move in-house?
It was lots of things, actually. Probably none of these are the official answers that I give, but so lots of things. I think my second child, and I wasn't planning a third for a while, had, so she would have been just under a year.
Mm,
I was, so I had a view, which I think is one that I would say for women. I regularly say women shouldn't have this view, but I had a view that you stay somewhere to get your maternity leave. I think it's the wrong view, but I stayed to get my maternity leave, which
mm,
may or may not have been the right thing. It's so long ago. Uh, and then on return, I knew now I have a stable future for a little while and it's a good time to move. I'd done a secondment to News International and I'd enjoyed being in house. I also know at the time, and this is still true, but more true for people at this stage now, that we were being encouraged to do less work and more selling. And I was
mm,
actually very good at selling, but I knew that if I ever wanted to go in house, it was going to become harder and harder because my role was becoming more selling and less doing. So
mm,
the skills I might need, and it was already very hard to move in house,
mhm,
and the skills I had to develop, I knew they were going to get harder and further away. I think kind of the prompt again, so this is a bit of a warning to employers, was I'd asked my employers at the time if they would consider a flexible working arrangement where I could have 4 day a week, 4 out of 5 days. So one day not working and one day working at home. So 3 days in the office. Sounds quite normal now. But
mhm, mhm,
at the time it was a little bit too spicy. But they said, look, we'll consider it. And they were considering and whether we're going to set a precedent. And while they were considering, I thought, well, let's see what's out there. So lots of things kind of prompted it.
sure.
My experience out in industry when I'd done secondments, the changes that were happening around me. But even so, I remember you sitting with me and I was just so worried about it. I was like, I just can't understand if it's too scary to leave this safe place of the big four where I've been for over 10 years at that stage.
Mm.
So
Yeah, no, I remember it. I don't remember the year, but I remember it really well in terms of how you came across. And if you don't mind me saying, just to build on that, that I feel that you were not owning your brilliance because
mm,
obviously I haven't met you. I'd seen your CV and I'd seen what you've done. I was like, oh my God. And then I met you and you were introverted, quietly spoken, sharp. Obviously, when we were speaking, I could tell like it's going on in there, but just not walking with the confidence of someone
mm,
who could in effect get most roles you applied for within reason. So
yeah.
yeah, to see you now and know you over the years and the transition it's been awesome. You know, like sit here with my popcorn and oh, look, there's with someone
One of
else.
your success stories. Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I would like to say I'm a what am I? A conduit rather than a creator because I didn't study like you studied and I didn't do the things that you did. And I think one thing I love about what you said is just taking the step to do a bit of an audit on yourself in terms of where you are, what you enjoy doing, and then actually, if I should stay on this path, will I be further away from the things that I want or not, and then making the decision at that time. Because I think often people think you've got to have it all figured out, but how do we know
Yeah.
until you get to the bit where actually you're at crossroads and then you decide,
Yeah.
So the move in house comes, and I believe it was checking on my screen 2013. So we
Yeah.
met within a short time, days. I'd love to profess, but it wasn't. But we got you a new role. You interviewed and got on well. How was that transition from working with many clients and being part of a massive machine where there is development, there's a clear defined path, etc., to moving in-house where it comes with all the magic, but all the messiness that most
Yeah.
companies have? Like, what was that transition like? Just to share a bit around that.
It was so hard, actually. And so I'm really thoughtful of it when I've recruited in-house, particularly from
Mm,
practice now. I'm so thoughtful of how hard it is because I think it varies. I think if you go into a big team, it can almost be very similar.
mm,
But where you're going into these small in-house or greenfield roles, like it's just really hard because
mm,
you go from if someone fires off, so typically you're coming from a corporate background, a corporate tax background, someone starts firing off these different sorts of questions to you. And you think, okay, where's my guy who knows that? I'm just going to pop up to the third floor and ask them, but it's all on you. So that was
Mm,
hard, having to learn how to find answers for yourself. But it's nice because you have the time, so you don't have the same sort of chargeable time pressures and how much time you're going to put on a client code. I think I think that the point about having a defined career path is actually very interesting because that again is hard. Like I was really used to, you will do 2 years as manager, then you will be senior manager, then you will do, and so it's kind of clear the hurdles that you have to meet,
yeah.
and it's a lot less clear. But on the other hand, if you do well and people are pleased with you, the career paths are there. It's just not so obvious, and it's a lot harder to, you have to keep building business cases for yourself, and you have to keep, like, in reality there's not an infinite number of positions.
Right.
There's a fight, so you could be waiting for people to leave, and sometimes in some places you may find yourself waiting for a long time. So there's definitely a challenge, and I think, but the hardest challenge I think I found was the initial feeling of being alone, of having to
Mm,
find answers on your own, and learning how you make those judgments about when you go, because you can initially feel that you have to have all the answers for yourself.
right.
But over time, you learn to judge actually when you would go and ask for advice and pay for it,
Hmm.
when you would ask for advice and not pay for it.
Yeah.
When you would just say, "Oh, can I just bounce this off you?" And you start to build a network that you can use both of other people who are in-house and people who are just good people who are out in advisor firms who are more than happy to have a quick chat with you before they start the clock running.
Mm,
So that network starts to build around you. I think the management structure is really different. Again, being in-house, it's typically sort of a linear.
hmm.
Some people have matrix, like in the advisor firm, so that you're working for lots of partners and have lots of people reporting to you, but the typically linear management structure is really different, to have to learn how to directly manage people rather than as a cohort, and to also have to learn how to be directly managed all the way up to CEO is again really different. So if you're having a bad day with your boss, you're not just going to go and pick a different partner to work for. You are going to work for that guy. So
Right.
so you learn how to get along with people differently, but
Mm,
um, it was definitely a steep learning curve,
yeah.
and I carry that with me now when I recruit people. In that, I think I'm aware of how hard that initial journey is.
Yeah. You can empathize with that for sure. And I
Yeah,
guess one of my favorite things to think about, where, don't know where I saw it, but essentially that empathy allows us to hear the echoes in others, in ourselves.
Mm.
And I feel like where you've walked that walk, twist, turn, bumpy, smooth, all of it. When you bring someone in from the profession, you know what they may not yet know about what it is to acclimatize to and adjust to, having you as their leader, and not being in a. I looked at the professional services as like an extension of university. Basically, you come in and you've got your year group, and there's
That's sort
loads
of
of
true.
you,
Yeah.
and you're going out together, you're doing all that stuff, and you've got bright minds around you who are equally motivated, because you can't get into them if you're not,
Yeah.
who are. Whereas you move into the profession, then some people are, they want to save a life, and some people are like, I want to
Mhm.
smash it. You've got to manage all of those as
Yeah.
you do your job, right? So yeah, good on you for that. Something else I want to talk to you about that transition is just obstacles you've overcome. You sort of touched on a few different things, but are there any key obstacles that you overcame in that transition, or your career journey more broadly can be, that you're really proud of when you sit here now?
Uh, I mean, so I was really proud. That was so UK Power Networks was the first place where I'd had to do that kind of getting into the pipeline of talent and getting moved up.
Mm,
And that I mean, it was a male-dominated environment as well,
yeah.
and it was hard to kind of get yourself noticed. So I was proud of that. And I was proud of how we kind of built the team there. And it was tough. When I came in, there was a team that needed lots of support and change. And I was proud of how we delivered that. Uh, I mean, most of the obstacles in my life have been probably personal rather than work. And I think most of the work ones, I think the pride is probably in, for me, like I'm happy every day at work. I just enjoy it.
Mm,
Professional obstacles. You did forewarn me of this one, but I just can't think of any that were really hard to overcome. But I think
mm,
it probably understates how hard it is to constantly. I think you're constantly in a male-dominated environment and trying to kind of move up, and that's hard.
yeah, yeah, I can imagine. And I love what I do in its entirety, but being able to support women, the global majority, allies more broadly, gives me so much joy because I have this vision, maybe too woo, where if there are more diverse
Hmm.
individuals at the top of the tree, there is greater diversity of thought. And back to the point about empathy, you know, you being where you are, you exercise that empathy with those around you, that you can push against groupthink if there is such a thing that comes up, and say, hang on a minute, have you thought about it from this angle, and help counteract or
And I think
contribute, you know?
I think diversity of thought is what I really try to promote because it then isn't about, gender or anything else. It's about whether you think differently. And I think actually one of the interesting things that I mean, it's so long ago because my son is 10, but in that second job, one of the things was actually trying to get flexible working in place when I returned from having him.
Mhm.
And it was lucky because I had such a pivotal role and they were supportive. And I put together a proposal where I could come back to work 4 months into my maternity, maybe even three, use my kit days. I was able to work at home for 3 months and it allowed me to keep breastfeeding all the way through until he was on solids and then be full time back in the office. And I think it was really cutting edge at the time. So, it doesn't sound it now, but I think I've often encouraged other people to try and think outside the box and think about what they can do flexibly, because I think there's so much you can do if you balance what the business needs with what you can deliver. And we
Yeah.
did similar for one of my team. She was a vet specialist and she wanted to do something with term time working, and we were able to do that because ultimately it lined up brilliantly for the business as well. It meant she was working more days in her busy period, but in the
Mm.
holidays, when we didn't need her as much, she was with her children. So,
Mm.
and I would love to see that across the board for men and women. So,
Yeah, I love that. The creativity, you know, like coming with, because sometimes you don't ask, you won't get, but coming
yeah.
with an ask that's backed up with, to your point, like a business case or a sort of commercial rationale underpinning what you're saying can often open minds. But then you have to have the leadership that are willing to not just say computer says no and hear you out. So it sounds like you've been fortunate in that regard in certain instances. So well done, you.
Yeah.
And tools wise, have there been any tools that you've used to support or elevate your path to the leadership role that you now have?
So one of the things that I really appreciate, and I know it gets kind of mixed reviews, but I really appreciate knowing people's dominant personality types. And there's all the different tools we use currently. Even in my last role, we used the colours.
Mhm.
So which is your dominant colour? So I'm red yellow, which means I like getting stuff done and I like having fun. So, and I'm probably a bit heavier on the red, but I find it really helpful because I think for a long time it was unclear to me, why are some people constantly asking you more and more questions, or
Mm.
why? And once you understand, okay, this person likes detail, or for example, me, I don't like when advisors send me like loads of detail. And once they realize that, it's really helpful because they know, okay, she's going to want a summary or some bullet points or some headings. So for me, I found that really helpful. I found it helpful at various points to have either coaching or someone to help me overcome when I'm struggling with just how to kind of work with something new. Uh, and at work, we use so many tools, like how we think and how we use, and I found them all really helpful. I'm trying to think which ones have been most helpful. So actually, we did. I can't remember the name of the book. Which is the one where it thinks about your kind of monkey mindset and your computer mindset? Do you know which one I mean?
Chimp paradox.
Chimp Paradox, that's the one. There you go.
Yeah,
Not a coach for nothing.
yeah. You call me Waterstones. I've got you.
Yeah, so that one I found was quite a helpful model again, because it helps you work out why are you feeling threatened, or
Mm,
where is this actually coming from? Are you actually just going back to some sort of primitive instincts, and strip
mm,
that out of it? And that's really helpful even in my current role, because where things are ambiguous, you can start to get, concerned or worried, and it helps you kind of actually, this is just kind of primitive instincts, and try and actually work out what's actually going on here.
yeah, you're speaking my language. You know, you're speaking my language, and book included, because there is that delay between stimulus and response
Yeah,
that is just super powerful. And uh, I say some people rather than a lot. I haven't got the stats, but some people will not think about why they're responding. So their level of awareness is not up, and things will happen, and it will manifest personal and professional life.
yeah,
It will happen. And then they'll be like, well, that's just the way it is. And it's other people's things. But when you start to stop and slow down and, do the forensic examination of which part is it? Can we do high level thinking around this? Can we synthesize different views and get different perspectives, and maybe actually be curious and ask some questions? Because I had this conversation with a good friend of mine yesterday saying that I felt that I for many years, I'd used the frameworks that I designed as a child in my formative years and applied them to situations now when my language was so primitive. I could
yeah,
tell you I don't like something, or I really like something, or I don't. But anxiety, depression, ashamed, feeling ashamed, all these different feelings, positive and negative. It's richer now, so it doesn't make sense to use the same framework still. So stopping to say, is this an echo of the past?
yeah.
Does it apply? Can I look at this another way? Can I ask some questions to clarify? I think is yeah, you're speaking my lingua franca.
It's very helpful, because sometimes I think, I mean, I've always tried to do it at work, or you have to ask yourself, really, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here? Because it stops you. Sometimes your mind goes off, this is going to be a catastrophe. But when you really think about it, you're like, the worst thing that can happen is, I get called in to explain myself, or, it's not going to be sort of loss of life or job,
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
so true. That is so true. And I'm keeping an eye on time because I know that our aeroplane has got to cruising altitude, and you have many things to do, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Your remit at Nando's is super broad. You told us a bit about that at the start. How do you balance the requirements and the technical differences within those requirements? Because some would look at it and go, "OMG, that's four people's jobs that you're doing by yourself." So how do you do that?
It's hard actually, because some of them are very cyclical,
Mm,
which means sometimes, and the other half are very sort of take yourself into space and think about how you're going to move this forward. So you can eat up all your time with cyclical things that are, routine and have to be delivered, and that's the challenge.
mm,
And it does sometimes prompt the conversation about recruitment or having resource, because ultimately I don't want to spend my entire year doing cyclical things and not deliver on the rest, because I think it's that analogy about whether you put big stones in a jar or small stones
yeah,
first. And if
yeah,
you fill up your jar with all the big stones of cyclical things, you won't get the small stone stuff ever done. It will never fit. Whereas if you do the small things, or I don't know, you get the idea. Like if you keep filling up your jar, you've got a finite amount of space. So um that's a challenge, and I think now I've got a bit more balance. So I've got someone in my team who helps with some of the cyclical stuff, so that's really good. In terms of the kind of the skill sets, I think actually they lend themselves well, particularly at Nando's, because a lot of it is about trying to fit governance type things into a business that's very entrepreneurial,
right.
and not break it.
Hmm.
That's really the goal, because I don't want to break what's good about it. And so it's the same thing but across different areas.
Right.
And so it's trying to fit something that helps us protect our business, but without breaking what's good about the business. So it's the same thing, although it looks very different
Okay.
in
No,
its
I,
description.
I love that. I really love that because it's- culture and people are the two pillars of any organization as I see it, and I think culture really comes from the top. It's the foundation, but it comes from the top and it comes down. But what makes Nando's amazing, I'm a regular attendee of said establishment, is you know, it is unique in the way that it serves and presents and the vibe that when you go into it, etc. And you don't want to lose that and make people feel constrained, because I feel the more I've listened to people and talked to people, the more I've realized that we all want to be free in some way, shape, or form. Yes, we go to work. Yes, we do get paid, but you want to have, in many cases, the autonomy and license to bring your authentic creative selves to work. So when you have governance, which to me is #rules, you're like, whoa, that is not going to allow me to be free. But you can't run a business of Nando's size by just everyone running around like headless chickens, no pun intended, and doing whatever they want, you know.
So I kind of also give the analogy of sometimes knowing what you can do does give you freedom. So sometimes if you don't have governance or rules, it almost means you don't know if you can do stuff. So I try to look at it as an enabler to freedom. But I agree that the job title sometimes will get you your back up of going, are you going to stop me doing what I want? Which is not my goal, but it's definitely the balance that you're carrying in the role.
I imagine, because if it's Teams or Zoom or whatever, and I'm in a position at Nando's and your name comes up, like, uh-oh, you know. But the way you presented it is, it sounds like it's a partnership that you take, and you want to facilitate all of the good stuff, all of the creativity, everything else. But these are some things that could cause us enterprise risk, like if you don't comply with these things. But I'm sure you put it more eloquently than I can, and that's why you've got so many things added to your job as it's going on. So yeah, proof is in the chicken rather than the dessert. So for me, like, leadership provides challenge and growth, and you talked a bit about the different challenges and the variety throughout your career. What are some of the key lessons from your leadership journey, so that I can be nosy but also share with other people, you know?
So for me, I think a few things: recruit well, don't skimp on your recruitment. So really, if you get a pushback on the budget, I think you really need to examine whether you're going to just end up having to micromanage someone. So get good people, and then don't be afraid to let them run as close as they can to you. So never be afraid of them catching you up, because they will only help push you away. So that's good. You know, so I think bring your people up, get good people and bring them up. For me, one of my things has been to pick my boss. And that's important to me, and that was quite early on. And you don't always get to do that because leaders change, but I think it's important that for me, going to work, and I get a lot of validation and praise, so I need to like who I'm working for, and like the values of where I'm working. So I think for me, you have to enjoy going to work. Like, work is not a work day for me. I don't get a Sunday feeling. It's all just part of life. Like life and work and home are all just part of life. So I think these are important things in kind of achieving it. And this is I've learned it, but I don't always do it. But I think you need to be able to speak your truth or ask for what you want, and not feel ashamed of saying this is what I want, or this is what I want to achieve. I've had people turn around and say you can't have that, or you know, you've got more to do, and that's fine. But I think you shouldn't be afraid to say it. And I think those unsaid things will fester more than than speaking them.
Yeah, true in the professional and the personal setting, I have to say, because it's the unspoken contract. You know, you assume that the other person understands that you've got aspirations to do X, Y, and Z. They have no clue. And until you have the courage, but also I'd say the environment, to your point about choosing your boss, I imagine one of the things about managers or leaders that you've chosen to work for is that they will hear you out, and they will be people that share values that you respect. So when they do give you the praise, you're like, yeah, actually that means something, because I actually respect you. Whereas if it's from someone who's got
Yeah.
some shady ethics, you're like, it's almost cringy when they say because you're then aligning. So communication comes through really strong in terms of some of the things that you've learned there. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to adopt that. Future aspirations for you is one that I often ask. Maybe from the beginning, we talked about it 12 years, 13 years ago, because 6 years here, 6 years at UK Power Networks, 9 or so at KPMG, I think, probably. And I like the fact that on paper you're standing in place, but actually you've grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. Is the future for you organic, or is there a role in your mind that you think this is all in service of getting you to?
So it used to be, if you'd probably asked me, or if you did ask me, it used to be a lot clearer. I always just wanted to work up the ranks to get to the top of whatever the ranks were. It's definitely more organic now because, as you say, so I think you have a choice in your career. And sometimes people ask me, do you wish you'd stayed at KPMG, or do you wish you'd stayed at UK Power Networks? Because now you'd be there. And the problem for me is I'm too impatient. I can't just sit and wait for it to happen. So I have to do the move and learn something new while I'm doing it. But now I've got to a point where I definitely feel the future is organic. I definitely want the next things, but it's so much less clear to me what those are. And people always say, what is the next big role? And I'm like, I don't know, because it will be whatever presents itself. So it can't be, I don't have a thing anymore if it has to be that role. I look for what, that's how I've kind of built my role at Nando's. It's the things that have come up. It's not the things that's what I want to do. So, and then I enjoy them. So I look at what the next opportunity is going to be, and it's going to be something that kind of presents itself. Through asking and pushing and being available, and that's what it will be. So for me, it's definitely an organic thing, and so it's not going to be something that's as foreseeable.
Then it's something I really wish I would have said to my younger self, because I realized from what you're saying that opportunity comes up when your preparation meets the avenue or direction that the organization wanted to take, and in that moment, because of the way you operate, they come to you. You can then do the cost benefit analysis or risk assessment and say yay, nay, and then go with it. But I think for many of us, when we go through the hurdles of life, it's very formulaic. So it's the school, then it's the college or the sixth form, then it's the degree, then it's a job. When your start, you're very much in that sort of hierarchical structure. So it's like level. And then I think you get to this certain point, maybe 40s or wherever, I don't know if the age is relevant, but you get to this point where you've climbed so high, and actually there is merit in dancing in the moment and seeing what pops up organically, because you just don't know what you don't know, right? Like, who knows? So I love that. Do you have a motto that is your morning mantra, or any sort of your morning mantra, or any sort of mantra that keeps you going, or is your North Star?
No, I don't think so. But recently it's more trying to push myself against my natural. People may be surprised when I say this. I'm actually I'm driven by people pleasing, but anyone who knows me will be surprised for me to say that. But I'm actually trying to think less about what will just keep everyone happy, and I push myself a little bit more to be honest. And I don't think anyone who listens to this will say that I need to be more forthright, but still, I feel, for me, I think sometimes I do things, I think I did that to keep family happy, kids happy. It's better than kind of making someone feel awkward by saying I don't like this bit of my job. And now I'm like, no, you need to be that little bit more honest with people. So I whilst I think I'll get lots of feedback on this, that don't worry, Ellie, you're fine.
It's the red is coming up strong there.
Yeah, but on the other hand, for me, I feel I have to keep pushing myself to be less trying to just make decisions that makes everyone else happy if it doesn't make me happy.
It makes sense. And I think we are like onions insofar as there's so many layers and so many sides, and there are so many seats that you sit at that it's not one size fits all. And the shadow can also be the light in some regards, you know. So that touches me and makes sense to me massively. Sad to wrap this up, but I do have one last question. Do we have time for that?
Yeah.
It's, I suppose, to inspire someone that's maybe earlier on in their journey, or navigating what next. If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self about what lies ahead and how to approach things, what words would you have for younger Ellie?
So I think, I mean, you were right. I was definitely much more within myself, maybe 12 years ago. So I think to be yourself, to not have to hide yourself. I think to not be scared of changing roles. So particularly, I think if you're in an advisory firm, you'll always be able to go back to an advisory firm. So maybe not the same one, but like generally there's advisory roles there. So don't be scared of kind of taking leaps. Definitely never tell yourself you can't do things. And probably another motto I should tell myself is I think sometimes you should enjoy the things you have achieved, because there's a tendency to kind of go, where's the next thing? But you should enjoy the things you've actually made and think, well, I've done well.
Yeah, no, and that you have. And it's a really great call out for what I think many of us are conditioned to have, which is obsession with progression, you know, like where am I going next, rather than being present in the moment and savoring it for all that it's worth, which you sound like you do. And I love that throughout it there have been little sprinklings of the fact that you enjoy what you're doing, you have fun, and you make fun a part of your life more broadly, which I think demystifies this idea that you can't have that as well as be in a high-powered, high-profile role and have family and all the stuff that we comes with that. So thank you, because I consider myself chief vibes officer, and I love it when I meet my fellow tribes people where fun is a prerequisite of what we're doing and why we do it, really, you know.
Totally, I agree.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well,
Chief vibes officer, I like that.
This is the beauty. I could call myself whatever, and no one's gonna ask.
That is the beauty.
This is the
Maybe
beauty.
that's the tip.
This is the tip. But no, chief vibes officer, and I think, you know, in essence, it's around, as much as I can, I think maybe this resonates with you, is surround myself with the people in the places, doing the pursuits, my 3Ps that uplift me and fill me with joy. And on my weekly planner, every day, I actually have fun on there. And it could be dancing to my garage music, it could be going for having a great but it must be there so that I appreciate that I have a choice in life. You know, it's not this has happened to me or that's happened. Yeah, but like I can create that for myself, and it gives me a little buzz, but also takes that power back that life is for enjoying. You know, it's not about the grind, and I don't feel that in my job anyway. But yeah, you get me. I think you get me.
Okay, yeah.
Well, 6 minutes to go. I'll let you go, and
Well done.
we did it somehow, and we'll catch up super soon. But thank you so much. I think when
Thanks,
we play,
Kofi.
it'll be inspirational. So thank you, and have a great weekend.
Cheers. Thanks.
All right.
You
Cheers.
too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.